Even a very low salary is enough to afford an apartment if you're willing to stay in the cheapest, crappiest place, which you should be if the other option is a park bench. A while ago, there was a supposedly mind-bending observation that made the rounds online, and it went something like this. If we really wanted to, we could fit the entire population of the world, several billion people, inside one building in New York City. The architects and mathematicians crunched the numbers, and they came up with the plans for a new structure that would supposedly make it work. Here's one artist's rendition of what it would have to look like with the Empire State Building there for scale. So it's very, very large, and it's not especially appealing from an aesthetic perspective. But it's certainly not impossible, in theory, to construct something like this. We have the technology. There's no doubt about that. With enough time and money, we could get it done, in theory. And on the surface, it was a pretty attractive proposition for some people. After all, if we build a gigantic cube structure like this in the desert somewhere, then no one would ever have to be homeless again. And then we could build maybe a massive cube-shaped Pizza Hut next door, and no one would ever go hungry again. All the world's problems, in essence, could be solved. All you have to do is provide the physical structure and good things will happen. This kind of thinking crops up occasionally in various different contexts. It's one of the reasons that left-wing cities pour millions of dollars into nonprofits that promise to end homelessness, which in turn spend thousands of dollars on hotel rooms and pocket the rest. It's also the reason that this video just went viral, featuring a Canadian-based nonprofit that's promising to end homelessness entirely with their new creation, which is a set of so-called tiny, tiny homes. And here's a little bit of their presentation.
Ryan, what we got?
Hey, got a little tiny home here. So it is 4 feet by 7 feet, so it's 28 square feet total. I want to show you around a few things. Take a peek.
Okay, I'm gonna sit right here in the corner, okay, Ryan?
Okay.
Mind you, I'm about 6'2".
I'm 6'1". I fit in here, I got a lot of space.
Yep.
So inside here you got your ventilation. This is really important for the winter time, for the summertime. You can keep out your heat and you can cook. Right here, you got a desk. That's the way you can eat, do your artwork, do whatever you gotta do. I got a propane burner behind me. And then
where do we sleep, Ryan?
When you're ready to go to bed, I grab this back cushion, I put it down, I move it over.
Damn. Yep. And the same thing for this one, right?
This cushion as well slots down.
Well, it all sounds fantastic, at least if you've never interacted with a homeless person in your entire life. The unhoused people can use the tiny desk for sending emails and, joining conference calls. And it's a big relief for everyone because, as we all know, nothing is more annoying than organizing a conference call and then realizing that the local hobo didn't log on. And then the unhoused individual can access propane, which certainly won't be misused in any way. Nothing bad can happen there with a homeless person with a propane tank. And then he can go to sleep and repeat the process the next day. What's not to love? Well, as I pointed out the other day, actually there's a lot to not love about this whole setup. The biggest issue is that a homeless person will turn this tiny, tiny home into a horrifying feces and trash-filled drug den in about 45 minutes. And that's because, as we've established many times before, homeless people are not homeless because they fell on hard times. They are homeless because they are completely dysfunctional, drug-addled vagrants who have no ability to live in civilized society and no interest in even trying. And it's time for everyone to just grow up and start being honest about this. Now, to give you some idea of exactly what I'm talking about, in case you need a visual reference, here's footage that was shot by the independent journalist Kevin Dahlgren. And it shows an example of a similar tiny home that was purchased by the city of Portland for its local homeless population at a cost of around $16,000 a pop. And there you go. As you can see, it does not appear as though the vagrant who inhabited this tiny home decided to make use of the facility to join conference calls or to tighten up his resume. He didn't seize the opportunity to conduct little tiny piano recitals or tiny basket weaving sessions for the local elderly community. Instead, he used his tiny home to get high and hoard dead cats. That's basically what happened. And of course, this is not unusual. It's how these kinds of projects always go. My prediction about how the homeless will treat these tiny, tiny homes from this Canadian company is not a Nostradamus prophecy. There are many, many examples of this kind of approach failing disastrously. Here's one recent example from downtown Los Angeles. Watch.
Only on Fox 11, concerns of rampant drug use outside of a hotel that's now being used for LA's Inside Safe temporary housing program. And neighbors say it's all happening just steps away from two schools.
Fox 11's Matthew Seedorf live tonight outside City Hall after relocating from the hotel on Union Street. Matthew, what'd you find?
Well, Christine, after hearing from this viewer and seeing it firsthand, we didn't feel safe even doing a live shot outside this hotel. But tonight we're hearing and seeing this video from outside for the first time.
Oh, she got it. Look, she got her fentanyl.
Possible illegal drug deals on public sidewalks.
They're attempting chest compressions.
Overdoses.
She really was waving a gun.
And arguments with police.
The rampant hard drug use and sales.
Just some of what Christopher Stone has recorded outside the Stewart Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Outside the building Thursday, Fox 11 recorded several people slumped over, a large encampment, and possible human waste.
They relieve themselves on the sidewalk because they're too high just to walk the 50 feet to their private bathroom.
Yes, it's too dangerous for the reporter to even film outside the hotel in downtown Los Angeles. This is the center of one of America's biggest cities that we're talking about. This is not Haiti, but it's resembling Haiti more and more, all in the name of helping the homeless. And this kind of thing happens all the time in Los Angeles, as you might imagine. A couple of years ago, vagrants caused more than $10 million in damage to the boutique Mayfair Hotel. According to Los Angeles Times, they, quote, shattered windows, vandalized bathrooms, and tore carpet off the floor. There was also open-air drug use, violence, threats to staff, and so on. All of this dysfunction was made possible by a federally funded program that turned hotels into homeless shelters to predictable results. Again, these people were staying in a nice hotel, not some tiny, tiny home, and they still managed to destroy it immediately. Because, as I've said so many times, their main problem is not a lack of housing. And this is not just a local issue, by the way. It's true everywhere that these homeless shelters and tiny homes are installed. The Sun reported on a similar situation in the UK, for example, quote, 18 mini homes which provide a bed, shower, and cooking facilities were installed 3 years ago in response to the growing number of street sleepers in Cambourne. Furious locals claim that they have led to a spike in street drinking, drug taking, and antisocial behavior. One local trader who did not want to be named in fear of reprisals told The Sun, I've experienced a rise in shoplifting and have had my windows smashed. Indeed, on the day The Sun visited, drinkers clutching cans of lager were gathering in Commercial Square and at the bus station, close quote. And the same thing happened in a so-called tiny home village in Seattle, as Jason Rance reports, quote, Jason Shackelford is the owner of Stingray Auto Repair, just about 7 blocks from the village. In court documents also presented as part of this lawsuit, he complains that crime and vandalism in the area has skyrocketed since the introduction of the village. The business now opens an hour later due to his safety concerns and says that he now finds needles and condoms around his business. Quote, most days we have to hose the urine out of our front doorway. This was never a problem until this year, Shackelford declares. Also affecting us is that we can no longer leave customers' cars in our own parking lot overnight as they are sure to get broken into, close quote. Now, people are outraged at me for my take on these tiny homes, but none of these people can deny the point that the homeless consistently destroy any kind of housing offered to them anywhere, ever, always, okay? Tax day may have passed, but for millions of Americans, the real trouble is just beginning. If you missed the April 15th deadline or you still owe back taxes, the IRS is ramping up enforcement. Every day you wait only makes things worse. With over 5,000 new tax liens filed daily and tools like property seizures, bank levies, and wage garnishments, the IRS is applying pressure at levels we haven't seen in years. Increased administrative scrutiny means collections are moving fast. The good news, well, there's still time for Tax Network USA to help. Are you self-employed or a business owner? Even if your books are a mess, they've got it all covered. Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track fast. Even after the deadline, it's not too late to regain control. Your consultation is completely free, and acting now can stop penalties, threatening letters, and surprise levies before they escalate. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh. You may have missed April 15th, but you haven't run out of options. Let Tax Network USA help before the IRS makes the next move. The evidence is very clear. And that's because the vast majority of the homeless people do not want to be in homes and are not interested in or capable of doing the basic things necessary to be productive members of civilized society, as we just saw from that story in LA. You can offer them a private bathroom, and they will still just take a dump on the sidewalk rather than walking 50 feet to the bathroom. Now, this all becomes even more obvious if you're just, again, honest and you think about what has to happen for a person to end up homeless. Okay, it's not like these are sober, law-abiding, functional, sane adults who get laid off and next thing you know, they're sleeping on a cardboard slab on the sidewalk. To be homeless, you need to be somehow unable or unwilling to get any job at all or obtain any lodgings at all of any kind. Now, just for reference, just like for an example, I checked based on a quick Google search. The cheapest apartments in Nashville, where I live right now, are around $600 to $800 a month. Now, these are not nice places at all and are probably located in dangerous areas. But they're basically palaces compared to living on the sidewalk. And even if they're unsafe, they have the security of Fort Knox compared to a cardboard box. Meanwhile, the average full-time employee at McDonald's probably takes home around $2,000 a month. Again, not a handsome salary, but it's enough to afford the cheapest apartment, and it's enough to, you can get it enough to eat to survive. So if you're homeless, why wouldn't you just do that? Any 16-year-old high school student can get a job at McDonald's. Even a very low salary is enough to afford an apartment if you're willing to stay in the cheapest, crappiest place, which you should be if the other option is a park bench. So then why are there homeless people all over the city? Like, why are there vacant apartments right now that you can get for like $700 a month and afford on a very low salary with a job that a teenager can get? Why? Why do I see the same rotations of vagrants hanging out at the same intersections for months, if not years at a time? Like, if they're hitting the pavement, trying hard to land some kind of job so they can afford some kind of housing, how are you still on the street 6 months later? Well, because the answer, of course, is that they're not trying at all. They're not making any effort of any kind at all to improve their circumstances. Because they don't want to improve their circumstances. Because they don't care. And yet, even that, right? Even that is actually not enough in most cases to make you homeless. Even, in order to be homeless, you need to be unable and unwilling to get any job or to live in any apartment. And, because that alone is not enough to make you homeless most of the time. And you have to have alienated every single person in your life who would otherwise help you. Now, go and talk to anyone who has a homeless brother or homeless cousin or whatever, and they will all tell you the same story. The story is the same every time. The story is, I tried to help the guy for years. I invited him to live with us. All he did was steal and lie and manipulate, and he made himself a liability and a danger to everyone around him, including my family. And so eventually, even though we love him, we couldn't do anything for him anymore. We just can't, because he won't take any help and he abuses anything we give him and he steals and lies and manipulates, and that's all he does. It's the same story a million times over. And all of that is required in order for a person to wind up homeless. Leaving aside the very rare exceptions to this rule, in almost every case, it is that. It is someone who is unable and unwilling to do even the smallest, most basic things to get even the lowest paying job and live in the most modest apartment. And also, they have systematically alienated every single person in their life. Mix all that together, that's how you end up with somebody on the street. And that's why you aren't going to solve the problem with cute little tiny homes. If you could, homelessness would not exist, because there are already small, unpleasant, and extremely cheap housing options in every city in the country. So, what is the solution? The only solution is to institutionalize. You start making use of prisons and asylums. We began closing the asylums in the middle of the last century in this country, in part because the pharmaceutical industry successfully pushed the claim, which we now know is false, that they can produce effective antipsychotic drugs. And now everyone admits that actually we have no idea how many of these drugs even work or if they work. We have no explanation for the dramatic rise in the number of mass shootings and suicides and so on. But despite these developments, no one's ever bothered to revisit the decision to close the asylums from the 1950s to the 1980s. Instead, activists are now seriously pushing the idea of tiny, tiny homes, even as every other tiny, tiny home becomes a storage locker for needles and dead animals. What these activists don't want to acknowledge, even though it's obviously true, is that you can't fix homelessness by building a giant cube in New York or a pop-up tent city in Portland or a tiny home in, Toronto. The homeless population overwhelmingly is deeply troubled, mentally ill. They've dedicated their whole lives to drugs. It's the only thing they care about. And the way that they want to live is incompatible with civilization. Now, that's tragic, of course, but it's a lot more tragic to allow psychotic degenerates to destroy everyone else's quality of life. The fact that some people are incapable of living in a functional society doesn't mean that society needs more tiny, tiny homes. It means that these people need to be in an institution, somewhere far away from the rest of us. And if the creators of these tiny, tiny homes don't realize that now, it will occur to them the moment that their new tenants get high and take a dump all over their tiny, tiny furniture. And that is why the creators of these ridiculous little homes for the homeless and everyone else who denies the true cause of homelessness and refuses to be honest about this are today canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.